Hi, I'm Rosie, and today I'm not just going to give you a look at the tower garden, I'm going to give you an up-close look so that you can see the advantages of the tower garden and why it's so easy to use and to be able to grow food all year round for your family. I'm going to start off with the flex tower from the bottom up, and afterwards I'll explain the differences between the flex tower and the home tower. So at the bottom, of course, these are the wheels, which are optional. You don't have to have them, but I highly recommend them. The reason I recommend them is because the tower itself isn't heavy. It's just a shell holding all your plants. But when your base is filled up with water, the base has 20 gallons of water. That 20 gallons of water is about 150 pounds. So that's not something you're just going to easily slide around unless you have the wheels underneath. This also helps you save space. Rather than placing your tower where there's room to walk all around it, you can roll it back against closer to a wall. And then when you want to harvest, you can either spin to get to the back side of the tower that's not out front, or you can roll it into the middle of the room so that you can get around it. I've also seen people actually roll their tower garden to the kitchen every couple of weeks, and that's where they do their water top-ups, and then roll it back to where they're keeping their garden rather than carrying the water to the tower. That way you can do it either way. This is a 30-inch wide base of your tower garden flex. That's wonderful because it's small enough to fit through most doorways, but still big enough to hold 20 gallons of the water and the minerals that it's going to be feeding the plants in your tower garden. This makes it easy so that you can go away for 2 or more weeks and your tower garden doesn't have to be topped up or checked by any friends. You don't have to worry about watering the plants because that water is being recycled. By recycling the water, we're saving about 90% water usage over traditional gardening, where water is seeped away into the ground rather than continuously being used for those plants until they've actually used it. Okay, now let's look at the tower components themselves. I'm holding it like this to show you it can't fall apart. And the reason it can't fall apart is there are wing nuts and stainless steel rods that run all the way from the bottom of your tower garden to the top. And that's what all the components are stacked together. Then at the top, there's wing nuts that hold it all together. So that each level of your tower is secure. They're not going to separate from one another. And everything is capped off with this very special shower cap. Notice how it has holes that are designed to make sure the right amount of water is flowing down to all of your plants. Just to be sure we can see that, I've taken apart the top. Now you can see those 2 stainless steel rods that run vertically up and down through the tower. And each section of the tower is seated into the other one by lining up onto those stainless steel rods. Then it's topped up with our shower cap. Unless we decide to add an extension kit. You can choose to add extension kits, and I'll show you those in a moment, but that can be added on, and then you'd finish it off with the shower cap. But because we're going with the base 5 levels with 4 ports on each section, we have our 20-port flex tower ready to go once these last 2 wing nuts are on. That's all we have to do to get it set up. I'll just finish that off. And what's great is everything now is set so that when that water comes up to the top, it gets showered down properly. And you can see there's a stagger between the rows. The reason that is fantastic is because when this row is growing, it doesn't immediately run into the row above it when it's 1 level tall. It can grow 2 levels before it even starts to reach the plant that's above it. That's a big benefit. When you have bigger plants, you can have bigger yield, which means more food. Now let's look inside. In the base of your tower is where you're going to put the pump that is included with the kit. This pump is made in Italy. It's high efficiency and super quiet. When it first turns on, you can slightly hear the pump, but once the water starts to trickle, the sound of the trickling water, which isn't very loud, is louder than this pump. So it's a really quiet system, and it's quite soothing to hear the water falling. A lot of people are concerned, is the tower garden going to create humidity in their house? This isn't spraying or misting water into the air. It creates less humidity in the house in a month than a single shower does or running the dishwasher does. That is pushing way more water out into the steam, out into the air. This is just flowing down through your tower for a few minutes each hour. Now, how it does that is that pump is plugged into this timer, which has one button. It has a setting for indoor and it has a setting for outdoor, indicated by an I, which looks like a number 1, or an O, which looks like a 0. So outdoor, indoor, and that's how you set it. On the back, on the instructions, it tells you how many minutes that's going to turn your tower garden on and off for. So for the outdoor setting, that's going to have your tower on for 3 minutes and off for 12. On for 3 minutes, off for 12. And for the indoor setting, it's going to be on for 5 minutes, off for 45 minutes. Because indoors, where it's cooler, it doesn't need as much water as it does outside where it's hot. These are the baskets that come with your tower garden. They are reusable to be used over and over again. You remove the old plant from them, wash them up. A little bit of vinegar will help get off any mineral deposits, and they're ready to go again. They simply go into each port on the tower and snap into place. And what their role or their job is they keep your plants from falling down inside. So they hold the plant while its roots are developing and it's growing. When your tower garden arrives, it's always exciting to get it out of the box and get it set up. The reality is that nothing actually starts to grow until you get your seeds planted. Now, again, as I said, everything is included with your tower garden kit when you start. This is the rock wool. These little cubes are individually broken out so that they each go into a separate port on your tower garden. We soak this with water, and it's a spun rock fiber that will hold your seeds so that they don't dry out, and also to prevent them from falling down into the tower. You can use any seeds you like with the tower garden. There's nothing proprietary, or you don't have to keep repurchasing from us. You can use any heirloom seeds you've been given or purchased anywhere in your tower garden. The seeds that are included, we send you about a variety of 6, some basil, some greens, some kale. A variety always arrives. These ones are non-GMO organic seeds, but you can use any seeds you like, or you can go back and use these. If you want more, they're also available on our website. Speaking of our website, if some people get the impression that, hey, if I grow right through directly through the company and order my tower garden, it might be cheaper that way. It's not, it's the same price. But what happens when you go directly through the company is they randomly assign a tower garden coach, and that person becomes your tower garden coach. If you prefer to choose specifically a coach, whether it's myself or someone else, that way you know who you're getting, and that way you know how it's, you've probably developed a relationship a little bit with that person already, maybe messaging and asking them some questions before you purchase your tower garden. So it's the same price whether you go directly through the company or directly through a coach. Remember, your coach is going to answer one-on-one questions for you. They are there to help you, and based on, you might live somewhere hot, you might live somewhere cold. They're going to tailor that guidance for what you need. And if you ever stump them on a question, if it's not me and they know me, they can reach out to me and I will help them get the answer. And if you ever stump me on a question, I have people that I will reach out to, and they are garden experts and master gardeners who will help me answer those questions. I now have about 6 years of gardening experience with the tower garden, backed by over 30 years of traditional gardening experience. I love gardening. It's lots of fun. It's a different experience all the time. But what's been really special about the tower garden is being able to grow all year round. Instead of having one summer season where if I get a hailstorm or bad weather and I lose my traditional garden, I don't have to worry. I can still grow fresh food all year. I don't have to wait till next spring to get another shot at it. I can just keep right on growing continuously. You'll be able to do that too. Now, this is a Swiss chard that's been growing for a few weeks. I think this one's probably 3 weeks. This is one that's at 5 weeks. What we love about the tower garden is once your plants get to this stage we don't harvest them right off and have to replant a new plant. We do cut and come again. So we'll take the outer leaves and we'll harvest them, enjoy that for our meal. We'll take that from a few ports, have a variety of whatever you want. You might be growing some Swiss chard, some arugula, some Caesar salad, which is romaine. Whatever you love is what you get to grow. You get to customize your tower to exactly what you enjoy. But after you harvest, that plant has a nice established root system and it's going to continue to grow. Our basic rule is don't cut more than 70% of the leaves off. Always leave about 30%. That's like the solar panels that are going to help that plant regrow more quickly. Based on what plant you're growing is how fast it's going to reflush. A lot of the lettuces and other greens, they regrow in about 5 days. So while you're harvesting from other parts of the tower garden, that one's regrowing and everything else is still growing. And that's why you can have something to harvest from your tower every single day. My little Swiss chard is looking a little bit sad because he's been out here in the sun with me for a bit, but that's okay. I'll get him watered soon. I just wanted to show you how those get planted. They basically just go into the baskets and they'll spring up. He'll get back to life and once he gets watered a little. And that's how easy it is to plant. It's a lot easier than gardening in soil. Tower garden takes out, there's never gonna be any weeds. I don't have to worry about loosening any soil. I also don't have to worry about changing the soil out each year. Your tower garden comes with these. This is our 2 mineral blends, A and B, and it's not, don't worry, this is easier than making lemonade, and if you ever forget, the instructions are right there on the back. But basically, for every gallon of water, you add 20 milliliters of A and 20 milliliters of mineral blend B. These are all the minerals and trace minerals that ideal growing soil would have. Unlike my soil garden, after a few months of growing, even if I started with great soil, after a few months, you don't know what you have. You don't know what's been used in the soil. It's a whole guessing game. With our mineral blend, each time you add that, you know your plants have the ideal minerals and trace minerals that fantastic soil would have. Now, common question is it organic? And I can't say that because an orange or something that's a living thing, a plant, those are organic or non-organic. Minerals that are mined from the ground or rocks. So they're not organic, they're not inorganic, they're minerals. So don't worry, these aren't chemicals. It's rocks suspended in solution. Now let's look at the advanced system that makes it super easy to make sure your plants can eat their mineral. Once we've added our water, and each of us again has unique water, we've added our minerals and that's all well stirred together, then we're going to use the pH kit that is included with the tower, and it's basically just 5 milliliters of water in a little wee jar and some color, and you compare it to a chart and that tells you the pH of the water. Why is that important? Well, this is part of the magic of the tower garden. That was something for years that I struggled with before getting a tower garden, and I'm so grateful for how the tower garden has made this so much easier. Here we go. In my massive soil garden, that soil is all too high of a pH. And because the pH is too high, my plants can't efficiently uptake the water and minerals. So I end up with crops that have big plants and not a lot of yield. When I got a tower garden, wow, I saw the difference because now I had big healthy plants and I also had an amazing yield from my crops. Now here's how that works. You want your plants to be within a pH range of 5.5 and 6.5. Now it doesn't have to be precise, just somewhere in that range. Not like my soil garden, which has a pH of almost 8. Now, what would I have to buy to lower the pH of that much land? It would cost me more than what I'm getting from those crops. It just wouldn't make financial sense. With the tower garden, you're just adjusting that in the water and you're helping the plants uptake the water and the minerals that you've added to the base. When you check your pH, it comes with that little kit. It's just a few drops. You look at the color chart and you see what your pH is. If it's a little too high, they give you some solution, which has instructions right on it, to lower the pH. If it's too low, there's a different bottle that you use to add. Mix that in really thoroughly, retest, and that will bring you up into that general range. Now, like I said, don't lose sleep over it. It's only something I check probably every 2 weeks. As long as you're in the general range, you're doing great. But if you're like my big soil garden where it's way above the range, that's when it's going to make it more of a struggle for plants to produce the way that they possibly can. And ever since I've gotten a tower garden, that's one of my just the biggest lessons in gardening that I've received, is that pH really makes a huge effect on how the plants can uptake the minerals. Now, I've made that step even simpler by going to just Amazon or any growing store, and you can get one of these little pH pens. It's less than $20, usually around $12, depending on what country you live in. You put this in and it gives you a digital readout, and it precisely tells you what your pH is, and then you can add a little bit to lower or raise that pH. It doesn't take much, like a capful or two. Stir it in, and every couple weeks you can check that again, and that's going to help your plants really grow and thrive. If you ever forget how to do that, again, it's easier than lemonade. The steps are right on the back of the bottle, or you can ask your coach. All right, we're going to cap things off because you're already pretty much an expert on tower garden. The last little bit we're going to finish off is using the lighting system or not using the lighting system. So if you're growing outside, you don't need the lights because you've got sunlight. Sunlight naturally turns on and off every day. Your cap goes on your tower garden and you're good to go. When it's too hot or when it's too cold, you grow indoors with your tower garden, but there's not enough light through windows, especially windows with UV protection on them, and you'd have to be turning your tower garden all the time. It wouldn't work well to grow inside without some sort of a light system. So we're going to install, this is the LED light system that you can purchase. It's an addition to your kit. In the States, it's included with a home tower. In Canada, it's a separate accessory, but basically all you have to do is remove that shower cap that was on there and put on our light system. Here we go. Let's set these up. I would plug them in. The next thing is it's important to position them. Now you're going to position them so that they're about the width of your hand away from the plants. Then as the plants grow, this can be adjusted. These are fantastic, this flexible growing system, because it lets you adjust the light to the size of the plants. If the light's too far away, your plants are going to grow more slowly. When your tower garden first arrives, if you've got the support cage accessory, don't install it immediately. Leave that off of your tower garden because it won't allow the lights to be close enough to the plants to accelerate that growth. If they're out on the outside of the cage and you've got little plants way in here, they're going to get spindly and weak because they're going to be reaching for the light. If you leave the cage off, position your lights nice and close, perpendicular to your plants, that's going to help them really get growing quickly. Then as they grow, when it's big enough, that's when you can pop the lights off, install your cage accessory, and put your lights back on. Now, setting up the lights is also really easy. Just like the sun, we need part of the day that's dark and we need part of the day that's light. You can, each one of these pins slides in and out, and they represent 15 minutes of the day. So you would spin the timer until the little arrow points to what time it is currently. So right now it's about 5 o'clock. So I'm going to turn it to 5 o'clock. I'm going to push my pins out, and I'm going to have about 12 to 14, maybe 16 hours of the day that's light. And I want to have 6 to 8 hours of the day where it's going to be darkness for my tower. And those are the pins that I'm leaving inward. There's a switch here. This switch has two settings. One is to just be on all the time, which you don't want, but if you come in the room and you just want some light to see what you're doing, you can switch it on, and then you can switch that back off. That's kind of a nice feature. But timer mode is typically where you want your tower set at. And when it's in that timer mode, that's what's going to turn them off every night, turn them on every morning, and take care of your tower. A beautiful thing about the Tower Garden is it's a really nice ambient light that can really help people, especially if you live where it's so dark during the winter time that a lot of people experience some seasonal depression. With the lights, you can design them so that they're going to stay on till at least 6:30, maybe even 7 o'clock before they turn off. That way, when you come home, you've got some nice light instead of darkness right away. But then by 6:30, 7 o'clock, when that shuts off, that's going to help you naturally adjust and get ready for bedtime. But it's a really beautiful thing to have, especially when it's so dark here during the winter time. Now, the only thing I didn't cover was extension kits. So let's do that next. Correction. I also didn't go completely into the home tower. How is the home tower different than the flex tower? The growing column itself is the same size. The base is 24 inches, which is 6 inches smaller, and it holds 13 gallons instead of 20 gallons. So it holds 7 gallons less water and minerals. Now, what's the advantage to each of those? Well, if you have a house with smaller doorways and you can't maybe fit the 30-inch flex tower through any of the doorways, you might want to go with a home tower. If you live in a small apartment, you might want to go with the home tower. Now, the flex tower still isn't very big. It's a lot smaller than, most people always fit a Christmas tree into their house somehow every year. This is definitely a lot smaller than a Christmas tree. It's a lot easier to fit into the house. I personally have a preference for the flex tower because of the size of the base. 20 gallons is 7 gallons more than 13. That means it's about 30% less often that I need to do top-ups. So it's easier for me to go away, or even if I'm home, to look at it less often. It's just makes life easier. Only the flex tower was available when I purchased my Tower Gardens, and so that's what I've stayed with. If my house was smaller or I lived in an apartment, the home tower would be a beautiful alternative that I could go to and still have that beautiful spacing for your plants. The second difference between the home tower is that the wheels are included. That's why the price looks a little more, because with the flex tower, you've got to purchase those wheels separately if you choose, but with the home tower, the wheels are included. The final difference is that with the flex tower, you're getting all regular growing ports. So every level is growing 4 plants, 5 levels is 20 plants. With the home tower, this top section has been swapped out. So instead of that, it's the same size, but in that same amount of space, it's this microgreen section. Now the microgreen section, instead of 4 ports, it's 2 rows with 8 ports in 2 levels. So there's 16 ports in the same amount of growing space. Now there's pros and cons to this. It is a microgreen growing extension. That means it's for growing microgreens. So instead of planting 2 or 3 seeds, depending on what you're growing in each port, with the microgreens, you might plant 12 to 20 seeds in each of those little rock wools that you're seeding, and you're going to cut them off and trim them and grow those microgreens. If you tried to grow the regular size plants up here in the microgreen section, they're going to get really overcrowded. You're basically putting 4 times more plants in the same amount of space, because you're going from 4 to 16, so 4 times more. And the roots are also going to get crowded. And this is what's commonly wrong with some of those beautiful countertop garden systems. They're really good at starting plants, but right when the plants get big enough that they're going to start to give you more yield, they get overcrowded and it stunts their growth and it slows down and you don't get more growth. And I find it, it's a little bit disappointing when somebody compares one of those other aeroponic or hydroponic systems to a Tower Garden, because they don't understand that they're going to get a lot more yield from a Tower Garden because it's giving the plants enough space to really thrive, and it's giving them the light at the proper distance, and it's giving them that nice stagger effect so that they're not being smothered, and you know that they're getting their water and their minerals all the time, and they're not getting choked out by the plants around them. So with the home tower, that top level is replaced with these microgreens. You can also use it as a nursery. You can start plants that will be going into these other sections. So if you have a lettuce that's starting to get overgrown and maybe finished, you might have a younger lettuce started up here, and then you can swap it down into that new location and start a new baby one up here so that you can cycle them through. But you really got to be careful not to let this get overcrowded and have the plants choke themselves out. I seen somebody, they planted mint up top, and the roots from that mint system just took over everything, and that was preventing everything else from getting their proper water and minerals. So keep plants to the right size. Okay, extension kits. There's 3 types of extension kits you can use. The extension kits come with stainless steel rods that screw onto the top of the 2 stainless steel rods I showed you earlier and add the height that's needed. Then onto those, you have 3 choices. You can get an extension kit that is 2 more levels of the regular extensions. So you're adding 8 more plants. You're going from 20 to 28. Or you can get a microgreens extension that has 4 levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 2 sections like this. So you're adding 32 microgreens to the top of the existing tower. Or if you're kind of on the fence, you can get a combo, which is one of these and one of these, and those just stack together and get added on to the top of the tower garden. You want to keep the microgreen section at the top because those are always going to be smaller plants versus having your other plants down below. With your coaching and everything you receive, you'll be taught to always plant so that your bigger plants are at the bottom, your smaller plants are at the top. That way, if this plant was big, the plant underneath it wouldn't be getting blocked from getting any light. But it's okay if one plant grows faster than the other than what you were expecting it to, because you can literally pop these baskets out and switch plants around. That way, if one starts to shadow another one out, you can switch them around. All right, that's my pretty in-depth, comprehensive look at Tower Garden. I've never done a whole really in-depth video like this before. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it beneficial. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I've really enjoyed doing this. I'll be celebrating my 6-year anniversary of tower gardening very soon. It still gives me so much joy. I'm excited to be growing inside again soon. I'm always learning from all the other tower gardeners out there. No 2 tower gardens are ever the same. It's always lots of fun. It's always delicious. When you grow food that is able to uptake all the minerals and get proper light, you get better tasting food. And that's something that isn't always available at our grocery store. So thank you again. I hope you've enjoyed this, and whoever shared this with you, get back to them, or if it was myself, feel free to reach out to me. Happy gardening, and I hope you love your tower garden as much as I do. Wait, I just want to give you a quick peek at my current outdoor tower. The tower you just seen a moment ago, that's going inside, and I'm going to be starting plants so that they can get started and growing. That way, when the frost happens in less than 8 weeks, we'll have food already up and growing and not have part of the year where we don't have that fresh food growing. Out here in the greenhouse, there's a big difference. I don't have the tower garden lights. Everything I grow inside is going to be a 24-inch tall plant or less. So dwarf tomatoes, smaller things, plants like chilies that grow really nice, smaller, denser plants, all of your greens and lettuces, things that are going to stay within the lights of the tower garden. When we're growing outside though, we don't have to worry about only growing plants that are going to be inside the range of the lights. So that's when it's easier to grow things like cucumbers, zucchinis, giant kale, bigger pepper plants, bigger tomato plants. I have, you see this tomato right here? It's almost ready to pick. I'd pick it for you, but it just needs another day or two. But this tomato plant is 9 feet tall. I can't grow that inside the house. The lights on the Tower Garden aren't tall enough to reach that. And that's why when I talked about the extension kits, you can only add 1 extension kit, because more than that, it's going to be too tall for the lights to be able to reach all the plants. If they don't have light, they just become weak, spindly plants and aren't going to produce food for you. Again, as a Tower Garden coach, I'm going to help you through any of those questions. It's not like purchasing something at online or the local garden store where here it is, you're on your own now, figure it out, sink or swim. With a Tower Garden, we're here to make sure you have success. Enjoy your growing, enjoy, thank whoever shared this with you. I hope it's been helpful. I hope I covered everything. Okay, that's a wrap.